the trouble with transport today. Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
Once upon a timetable, there was a tardy train. It trundled up and down the track and eventually came back again. Twice upon a timetable, there was an aeroplane. It flew across the smoggy skies, but was too expensive to maintain. Thrice upon a timetable, there was an electric car. The infrastructure was drained of energy, so it did not get that far. Finally, all travellers completely lost all heart, so they dusted off old technology and went by horse and cart. Well, the trouble with transport today is that we've got strikes, we've got restrictions, we've got carbon emissions that we've all got targets that we've got to reach. I ask you, do you have any faith in transport today?
Well, our transport system in the UK, talking from what I have knowledge of, is woeful. I mean, it's difficult to get around. There's different forms of transport, like the buses, like the trains, don't reach enough places, so that you become reliant on cars. And cars are getting more and more expensive.
Indeed.
And you alluded to the carbon tax and that whole policy area, which is just making things so expensive, making it almost impossible to travel and guarantee you're going to get there if you can afford it. So yeah, we're in big trouble here, and the problem is, as I see it, is that these are self-inflicted problems. It doesn't need to be like that.
Yes. Well, I know that if we take the United Kingdom as a starting point, because I think it's reflective of many other countries as well, but our crumbling infrastructure, the fact that a lot of our signalling systems don't all integrate, they're trying to do the best they can. A lot of investment has been put in place, and we are making progress. But the problem is when you step back, and let's be honest, folks, many people who have paid an extraordinary amount of money just to get on a train, the idea of having, say, a season ticket is exorbitant. If you compare the costs, 3 years ago to what it is today, is a dramatic difference. But here's the thing, even though you've paid for the right to get on a train, you can't go anywhere because there's too many strikes, strikes where people are now, some of the drivers are complaining they're not being paid enough, and there's many other issues. Now, that's just the train system. Then, of course, you can go by aeroplane. But, of course, now the airlines are saying that they are having to meet certain targets, particularly on carbon emissions. But at the same time, of course, as we've seen with the impact of COVID-19, many people still can't travel because of either they need a COVID pass or that actually it's just not really economical to run certain lines. But that's okay, that's the aeroplane. But then as we come on to the vehicles. Now, for those who've perhaps got an old vehicle, maybe whether it be a diesel or maybe an unleaded vehicle, you're being hit, of course, at the pump because the costs have gone up exorbitantly. But never mind, folks, because we're told by the government, yes, we should start to buy electric cars. But hold on, electric cars are very, very expensive. I mean, in the United Kingdom alone, one of the cheapest that you can buy could be £25,000 to £30,000. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a lot of money. Now, it doesn't end there. Because, of course, obviously, if you do decide to go somewhere, you have got to charge it. Now, whether you charge it at home or whether you decide to charge it if you can find a charging point somewhere, is that actually that's going to be very expensive too, because energy costs, including electricity, are going up. So then you sort of have to ask yourself, how do we get around and about? And it's interesting, isn't it, that particularly the United Kingdom, but I think many other governments are telling us on the one hand that we should transition away from fossil fuels and the carbon world, and yet the alternatives that they're suggesting just don't make sense. It just doesn't add up. So I really ask then is that what's your thoughts in terms of where the breaking point is? I've got mine, and if you're happy, I can give you my view on what the
Well, I mean, you're from
situation.
the business background here.
Yeah.
Yes, tell me.
So
what
here's my thought. I think that we need to, if we genuinely want people to get out and about into public transport, we've got to, first of all, decide where we want to put our efforts. If we want people back in the office, you have to give some kind of support to the railway service. Now, I know that one of the things that scuppered all of this, thanks to COVID, is, of course, obviously, the infrastructure that we were going to put in. That there's more investment that has to go into our overall systems. The beaching system that we saw, where there was masses of cuts in the 1960s, cutting off villages and even in some cases towns, was understandable at the time, but our infrastructure now just simply isn't there. I wouldn't actually even go that route now. I think that the train system, our infrastructure, doesn't work for the working world that we're in today. More people now can work from home, or dare I say, in special types of offices, whether they sort of be offices that are permanent buildings or whether they are pop-up buildings. And this is, to me, where I think the opportunity is to actually get the dynamic of the workforce moving in a different way. Not just simply getting onto archaic systems of whether it be cars, planes, or trains. I think we just need to look at the whole way that we actually think of the economy. I think that there is nothing wrong with people working from home or from a fixed-based office if it's local. And the reason I say that is one of the things that has struggled, particularly in the United Kingdom, is localism. Far too much has been lost where skills and lack of investment in the local communities have just been broken up. We need to get back to building out. We need to go back to what we've said on the Mark and Pete show, which is very much around localism. We believe that that's very much one of the mantras that we've been saying. And I want to stop at that point because I know that you, being a clergyman, albeit that it's not necessarily in a business capacity, can see the benefits of building back communities because it builds back integrity, it builds back investment in people, from schools through to industry and many others. So let's just hold it there before we look at the bigger picture.
Yes. Oh, I think that's right. The first thing to do is to say, well, what are you traveling for? Why do you need to move along like that? Earlier on, I said, and therefore we're driven to the car, which we are, because our public transport is woeful. But why? Why not the bike? Why don't you walk? This is far better. So the move to that, I think, will be pushed by the high prices of things, including buses, because, of course, they run on fuel as well as fuel increases. And so unless you're really, really going to have a lot of the money taken up by the public purse for traveling in a subsidized manner, I think that you're going to be pushed to walking and going on a bike, which I do a lot myself anyway, just because I prefer it. So then we need to look at, do you really need to travel that far? No, localism is better. Why do you need to go? Yes, a lot of work can be done from home, and a lot of places can, if you just think about it, can be reached by walking there. So it's a difference of thought, which could be actually a different way of thinking, which could actually be good, forced on us by this crisis, including the fuel cost price crisis, which is exacerbated by green policies. But that could be something good that comes out of it. As you say, I think, yes, that's the first part. Let's reduce the amount of transport that we need.
Yes.
But then you still need to travel. So what should be done with our woeful transport system?
Well, I know that the HS2 project, which is this idea that you sort of basically carve up half the country. Basically, the idea being is you have a speedier network and infrastructure. But here's my point. Look at where we are today. We've got a massive national debt. The money that is going or was planned to go and still is in some cases to continue on that project, I still think it's flawed because of what we need to do. Look at the bigger picture. Come back to the localism. The amount of billions of dollars or pounds, shall we say, going into that project, think of how much that could be better spent by building out the localism. Now, again, I'll give you an example. I'm not harping back to wanting to go back to the past, but there were times when very, very well-known organizations built out businesses, not just nationally, but globally on the basis of building communities. If you think of Cadbury's, for example, what a fantastic model that was. The idea that you brought in communities, you housed them, you educated them, you built out careers, you grew out not just the capability in your products and services, but across the nation, but you could then build out globally. That was a very, very simple model. We sort of lost the idea of bringing people together in that way. Here's the other thing: improve the broadband scenario. There are too many woeful patches of broadband, and certainly those who have come away from the big conurbations because of COVID, because they don't need to necessarily now live or work necessarily in the big cities, i.e. London. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but in order to actually operate, they need good broadband system. So there's another reason why you can invest. And that drives economy not just into the national side, but internationally as well.
Yes. So that's one side of it. And now I think also we need to encourage innovation on how we cope with transport needs in the future. If you think back, to the late 18th, early 19th century, you had, great innovations, and during the 19th century, developments of steam, and to the 20th century, right in the middle of the 20th century, we're still using steam, but new ways of pushing people across the country. Steam trains were a big thing. They opened up the country, and they certainly did. America opened up the vast distances there. What about new ideas? I mean, one is the Hyperloop, which Elon Musk has been proposing, and his companies have been promoting. In fact, the Hyperloop was invented in 1799, so back to the era that I was talking about. But basically, it's a low pressure tube, like a very long tunnel, in which you have a constant propulsion source. It's because it's a low pressure tube.
Yes.
What the cabins inside can travel up and down very easily. They'd be a lot faster than they are than trains are.
Extremely faster, yeah.
But they'll be sealed off, so they'll be safe. And they'll be low cost. That's the idea. But that's just one idea. What I'm saying, there must be more ideas. Let's think creatively for the future. It can't be that our innovation stopped with steam trains and the petrol car. Come on, let's move. Electric cars were around at the start of the 19th century. Let's think of something new.
Well, I do agree that, taking the point just a little bit from leaf out of Elon Musk's book, because I know that he's controversial in many ways, but he's a visionary. And what I like about him, on one sense, is he's prepared to push the boundaries. Now, he is involved in a number of other things. So we talked about transportation. And I'm not saying that this is the solution, but it is being explored, which is the idea or the concept of automation, and the idea of vehicles turning up at your house or your business or so on. Now, if you have this idea of driverless cars, meaning that you don't necessarily then have to rely on a train, a bus, and so on. You would have different vehicles that would come to you. You would call upon them on an on-demand basis. We're not there yet, by any means. Some people say it can never work. Hey, some people say you can't get a tin box up in the air. Yes, you can. And I think that there is possibly, when it comes to the problem that we've got in the United Kingdom, is a bad infrastructure. Now, in other countries, the infrastructure is better, so it's probably a little bit easier. But what I do think with automated vehicles and autonomous vehicles is the idea that actually could apply to places like Europe. If you think of the complexity of network in some places in Spain or France, in some cases, but definitely is applicable to Britain, I could see that there would be some advantage to that. But that's more long-term and visionary. What I'm concerned about is the next runway for the next 20 years, because we're still going to have to be reliant on what we've got at the moment. We are still very carbon related, and we're very carbon reliant. I think sustainable fuels will come. It's getting better, whether it be solar, hydro, wind, and so on. I mean, there's lots of initiatives, and tremendous progress has been made. But for the next 20, 30, even 50 years, we are still going to be carbon related. And then, of course, that affects so many other things. But I do agree with somebody like Elon Musk pushing the boundaries, whether it be the Hyperloop, whether it be automated vehicles, whether it be other concepts that are coming in place, and the way that you work differently. The concept of having to travel hundreds of miles, tens of miles to just get to a physical desk somewhere because it pacifies some needy manager is not my idea of forward-thinking business. No. I know that there are different things where, again, obviously, you wouldn't necessarily want to do that with people where they have to be in a fixed space office, because if you're in a power plant or you're in a hospital, possibly in a school, you couldn't necessarily move them. But I think that we're now at a point now where we are having to rethink things. And maybe with the fact, when we come to this whole concept here of the trouble with transport today, is that what we've got too many leaders in industry and in government tinkering with the past, i.e. an archaic system, and not something like Elon Musk is trying to do, which is be much more forward thinking.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I mean, paradoxically, we've ended up with the opposite of what you would want, in that you have the idea of having your entertainment as social activities being done automatically at a distance, watching TV, etc., going on the internet, and then you have a push to go back into work for offices which could be done remotely perfectly well. So it seems to be going in the wrong direction. And church, of course, all of that remains online. And online church is its own thing, if you like, its own type of church. But church itself, local communities need to actually be face to face. So something's wrong there. We need to get back to real localism. And online office work can be part of that, allowing people to stay in their community. But what do you think, gentle listener? Let us know. Make a comment next to this episode. Go to markandpete.com and you'll find it there. And listen to the other episodes. You can make a comment on every one. Why not? But until next time, it's bye for now.